And this will be our day 10, right? Okay. Okay. So, not day 9. Let's start with a README file, right? readme.md. And यहाँ से we'll start building upon things and all, right? So, chalo, first step will be learning about async JS, right? So, what do you understand by asynchronous? Asynchronous word का मतलब, what do you guys think? What does that means? उसका मतलब क्या हो सकता है? Asynchronous is continuous, multi-thread, don't touch anything. All right, all right. So I can say that async means a bit something that is not exactly in sync, right? Again, the definition will be right. Let's say we have one, and then second task is being complete, then third, then fourth, right? But let's say if task is being completed in this fashion, is are we completing all the 4 tasks in both cases? दोनों cases में 4 tasks complete हो रहे हैं, right? But the like order of execution is different, right? It's not exactly same. Okay, so this is basically the basic meaning of asynchronous. But first, let's try to understand how our JavaScript in hindsight actually works. What do I mean by that? Let's create a file. Let's call it index.html, and let me just add script file in here. Script, and iske andar I'll just go and write few things, right? Nothing different, nothing that we haven't learned yet. I'll write a equals to 10. I'll do a let b equals to 20, and I'll take up a function, and I'll go in here, send comma b, and c. I'll do let c equals to, or this. In here, I'll write a return statement, and it will be basically adding all these 3 variables, right? What's going to be the output of this code? Zoom, yeah, sure. I hope it's visible now, right? So what will be the output of this code? Or are we going to get any output at all? C value is not there. Okay. So if there's no value, JavaScript by default gives it a value. What was that? What was the by default value? Undefined. Undefined. So undefined will be given to the C. Finally, should it return a number or should it return a not number? Right. So we're very clear that this thing is gonna return a NaN. But are we calling the function? No. So this piece of code is not really gonna run, right? Isko to print something from it, what we have to do is we have to basically run it, right? So let's go and run this piece of code. And in this, I'll pass A, B, and C. And we'll have to store it. So let's say I'm calling it store, and I'm gonna do a console here, right? So console.log of store. So rightfully so, we're getting not a number as expected, right? Right. Then we called the function with these value. We stored the value of return in a variable called store, and we just printed that store. This code makes sense to everyone. Everyone? Okay. Okay. Let's say if I go here and if I go and write C equals to 30, what should I be printing now? Now that I've given C a value. Why return not a number? Because if I comment this piece of code, we are adding 10, we are adding 20, and we are adding undefined, right? So that's going to be not a number. So let's say if I go and give this thing a value of 30, what am I going to get if I uncomment console? Everyone. Error. Okay. Anything else? Same as before. All right. Not a number. Yes. Okay. Same as before. Okay. All right. So even if I go and do this, it's still a not a number. Why? Can anyone tell me? Q? Because the value that we have assigned to the C is after we have called this function, right? So when line number 23 made this function call, C did not had a value of 30, rather it had a value of undefined. Correct, everyone? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So is everything running line by line, line by line, line by line? Right? So that's basic nature of the JavaScript. That is synchronous nature of JavaScript. Right? So now let's assume key if I comment this one out again, and if I take this out, and if I put it in here, right? If I uncomment this now, what am I gonna get? Right? Now are we gonna get 60? 60. So if I do this, we're gonna get 60. Right? That's because you guys remember that there's a difference between var and let. Right? What was the difference? Let was block scoped or global scope? Let was block scoped, right? So assuming कि I'm again doing this thing, but instead I am putting this as var. Will the output change or not? Not okay. Okay. So if I go and uncomment this, I'm still getting nothing. Right? Because again, JavaScript code is running from top to bottom only. Right? So when you're calling this function, you're still having C as undefined. Right? Why is var global? Because that is defined by JavaScript. Check. So this is clear, right? What is synchronous? Line by line running of code. Right? Now, what and why do we need asynchronous JavaScript? Because usually we're not gonna run codes like this in a e-com website or like website that we generally use. Right? So basically we'll need to call database will need to receive some data, then use that data to print something. Yes, what we have done in last section, just replace the local storage with database ka data. Right? Something like in that terms is gonna happen. Okay, let me draw a bit picture for you guys. Right? So you guys might get a better idea. So basically, आगे चल के क्या होने वाला है? We are gonna have like let's say again this make and let me just zoom the screen out. So yeah, so we had two things, right? हमारे पास front end था and हमारे पास back end, right? Right? Then we had a connection between these two. We have to create a connection between these two so that we can get the data. Right? So usually we call this thing fetch, right? So basically we are getting the data from backend to front end, or we are sending the data from front end to backend, right? So we have discussed things like this before also. So I hope this thing is clear कि front end और backend के बीच में talk कैसे होता है by using something which is called fetch. Right? Now this is thing of later. Basically, this is API का एक part. Right? Anyone knows about API? What API means or stands for at least? What does it stands for? किसी को पता है? Abbreviation वाला correct? Application Programming Interface, right? So basically, you guys might have heard about Fetch API. So you'll say कि Fetch is an API and all, right? But Fetch is basically part of an API. API का full form क्या है? It is basically uh, yeah, zoom this one out a bit. application programming interface, right? So basically, it's an interface between application, right? So if you have an application, you have a second application, and if you are making conversations between these two, the conversation is done through something which is called API or application programming interface, right? So API is basically something which is interface between one kind of software and other kind of software. API in overall, it is that, right? It's a bridge. For example, if I want to give you guys, let's say if you're downloading some application, right? Let's say if you're downloading Zomato. Take, so once you have downloaded this, does it ask you guys ki it needs your location ka access? Does it ask you guys? So location jo hai, it's another application. Zomato is another application, and we need to give this Zomato a data of our location, and location shares the data with Zomato. So whatever, like your Android is the API that is talking between these two things, right? So API is not a generalized term कि fetch is a API and API is fetch, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. API is an umbrella term and उसके अंदर multiple things come under it, right? Right. So why this entire API thing that we are discussing about? Because I'm going to tell you guys that going forward, we're going to learn about something which are called web APIs, right? And one of these web APIs we have used, which is LS. What's this LS? Anyone guess? LS क्या है? Local storage. Local storage. Right? So local storage is one of these web APIs. अब इसकी क्यों जरूरत पड़ी? I hope जो theory which I've thrown at you guys, at least that theory is clear. Why I thrown it at you, I'm not expecting you guys to understand that, but theory sense बनाती है, right? Let's try to understand कि क्यों उसकी जरूरत है, क्यों पड़ी, right? So if I come in here and for this now, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna run this application on Chrome because I'll need to run a loop, right? A big loop, and Edge is not very user friendly. So I hope you guys can see Chrome wala browser also. Everyone, can you guys see this? Chrome, everyone, can you guys confirm? Right? Okay. So in here, again, I'll open my inspect. Right? And there you go. The console, we're still getting not a number, right? I'll zoom this thing out a bit. But let's do one thing. Let's come in here and यहाँ पे, I'm going to write a piece of code. I'm going to write for let I equals to 0. And here I'll write console.log hello. And यहाँ पे I'll write I is less than or equals to. But what I'll do is now I'll write a huge number, right? So I'll write like to the power of 7. And I'll do a I++. इसके अंदर I'll write not, I won't be writing a console because then memory will be wasting a lot, but okay. Console.log and this will be bold, right? So again, what I'll do is I'll just copy this link, deprecate it, and I'll paste it. So yeah. In here, if I come back to inspect and if I come back to console, if I refresh the page, I think I'll need to increase this. So if I refresh it, do you guys notice a delay between hello and world? So basically what I'm trying to do is, यहाँ पे I have a console which prints hello. Then I'm writing a for loop which has which is running like these many times. And after this for loop is done running, we're printing world, right? So I'm going to add 100 and we'll see if the delay is there or not. So yeah, now was the delay observable? Everyone. So if I refresh it again, you'll see hello prints directly and then world prints, right? So basically, this is a large loop, right? It's like, it's around 10 to the power 9 times of iterations. Have we written anything in this loop? कुछ भी लिखा है in this loop? It's just empty loop, right? Did we ever discuss ki how big of a data e-com platforms deal with? कितने बड़े डेटा के साथ ई-कॉम प्लेटफॉर्म डील कर, Like just an estimate number. Was it thousands? Was it hundreds? Or was it millions? Millions of data, right? So for millions of data, is this for loop gonna be empty, or या फिर इसके अंदर will be doing something? Right? We might be creating element, we might be doing a logic, we might be applying filter and all. So do you think if I refresh it again with those many data, utne sare images honge, you have videos on YouTube, this is a viable way where you stop, you print something, then you stop for a second, and then you load other things. Is that what's happening here? Like I'm trying to explain you guys, right? So ठीक है, just keep this thing in perspective, right? इसको perspective में रखना, and let's get back to drawing again. Let's draw here only, edge पे ही करते हैं. So now in here, let's say you're loading a website, right? I'm going a bit freehand here, so no more like definitive shapes, but ठीक है. You have loaded a navbar, right? Navbar में you have a very few buttons and all, so this loads pretty quickly, right? But let's say कि you have multiple of videos, right? YouTube में. So you're loading one video, you're loading another 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 video, and then you have a footer, right? So now let's say कि if you are running this piece of code quickly, but this thing is taking 5 seconds of time. Right, 5 seconds later, and then you're loading the later stuff. Is this a good user experience? No, no. And this is not the only case where we are going to have a problem, right? Issue क्या होता है? Issue क्या होता है? Everyone has different setups, right? Someone is living somewhere, someone is living somewhere, right? So everyone is gonna get a different internet, right? We have like around 250 people here, right? Everyone is gonna have a different internet connection, right? Someone might have 10 Mbps, someone will have 100 Mbps, right? Someone might have 250 Mbps, right? So will the speed for everyone to download or upload data will be different? सबके लिए speed different होगी, right? Then there will be an issue of processing, right? So someone have Ryzen 5, किसी के पास i13 है, किसी के पास i9 है. So will it make a difference also, processing speed? Right? So basically overall, this issue is something that has to be dealt with, because this delay of 5 seconds on a 250 Mbps wala website might take 500 seconds on a 10 Mbps. Right? So is the issue clear? कि issue क्या होगा if we are just following synchronous JavaScript, if we are going from line by line by line, right? So does it something that we have to concern about and we have to fix? Yes, yes. So in that place, na, we bring something which is called asynchronous JavaScript, right? So let's say I have a code which is called 1, 2, and 3, right? One code takes 1 second, right? Second code takes 10 seconds, and third code takes 2 seconds. So if I run 1, 2, and 3 in this fashion, this is synchronous JavaScript. Asynchronous JavaScript, right? But let's assume hypothetically, I am running this, I'm printing 1, I'm printing 3, but for 2 na, I'm taking help of something which is continuously, जैसे ही ये चीज run कर रही है, it's also running this 10 seconds of program. Right? So my like let's say the navbar is here, then your data is here, and then footer is there. Navbar is 1, 2, and 3. So we are loading navbar, we are loading the footer, and this data that is loading, it's loading in its own time, but we are loading the initial data. Right? हमने एक loader लगा दिया है, and the user is saying that this is load. Will this be a better approach? Do you guys think? We are not waiting for second piece of code to complete. हम directly 1 print कर रहे हैं, 3rd print कर रहे हैं, because we are aware that second piece of code takes a lot of time. So हम क्या कर रहे हैं? We are taking help of something else. Like we'll talk about ये something else क्या है, but we are taking help of something else which is dealing with this thing. right? So now in this case, let's say I'm writing console everywhere, right? मैंने console everywhere लिखा है, console everywhere. So I'm gonna print 1, 2, 3. Yes, yes, 1, 2, 3 print करूंगा. But in this case, जहाँ पे we are just printing 1 and 2 instantly, and then 2 is taking whatever time, उसके बाद print हो रहा है. I'll be going with 1, 3, 2, like of case. Yes, yes. So are we going for asynchronous type of pattern? Right? So this is an example or a basic example of how asynchronous JavaScript actually works. Right? So how we do this and all, we'll discuss it. But basically, if you guys want to get a basic idea, so JavaScript is a single-threaded language, right? So उसके पास ना एक ही single source of truth है. It's gonna run from line number 1, 2, and 3, right? Given that JavaScript is single-threaded, you might have heard about this threads and all. कभी सुना है? Right? So now, given that it is single-threaded, ऐसा कोई हेल्प करने वाला लाइक डबल थ्रेड तो है नहीं इसके पास. सो व्हाट इट डज ना, विच एवर ब्राउजर इट रन्स ऑन, इट टेक्स हेल्प ऑफ दीज ब्राउजर, right? And in that browser there are something which are called web APIs which help it, right? So basically browser and JavaScript talk using these interface which is called web APIs, right? इसमें so far we have learned about local storage. Clear? So what we do is we give browser this second piece of code, और browser क्या करता है? It runs that. Right? Right? So one of these web APIs जिसको use करके we can go for asynchronous type of JavaScript is set time. Right? चलो code में दिखाता हूँ what all it does and all. Right? So let's go in here and यहाँ पे let's write a function, right? And this function I'm gonna call it delayed function, right? And in here what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna write console.log I there, right? And यहाँ पे I'll use a keyword which is called set timeout. Right now, this is gonna take two things. First will be your callback function, and second will be your time. Right? So let's say if I'm gonna call delayed function, and I'm gonna call this function, I'm telling अपने browser को कि after how much time do you wanna call this function, right? So this यहाँ पे जो second time लेता है, right? I'll just write a dummy code here. So set timeout. First thing will be your callback function, and second will be your time. But ये time जो है ना, it's in milliseconds. So are you guys aware कि how many milliseconds do we have in a second? Are you guys aware about that? No? Okay. So basically 1 second में we have 1000 milliseconds, right? So 1 second has 1000 milliseconds. Take, so let's say if I want to delay a function click for 5 seconds, how many milliseconds will it be? 5 seconds के लिए it's going to be 5000, right? Basic mathematics. So यहाँ पे जाके I'll go and write 5000. Now we'll go back on our browser and yeah, let's refresh it, right? So are we seeing hi there yet? No? Did we saw hi there after a delay? After a delay? Right? अच्छा, अभी एक और चीज दिखाता हूँ. So let's say if I comment this piece of code, right? Let's take this actually, and यहाँ पे I'm gonna write 1, and this 1 is basically gonna print console.log 1 help, right? उसके बाद I'll paste my function, and then I'll write console.log 2, or rather I'll write 3 help. right? And finally, I'll have this, right? So now I'll refresh it, and you guys see we are printing one hello, we're printing three hello, and finally we are printing hi, right? So are we doing something like this or not? Not this. Okay. Are we doing something like this or not? कैसे हो रहा है? I'll tell you, but are we doing something like that? Right? So basically, we are using asynchronous JavaScript by using set timeout. What this set timeout does, it takes a callback function and it calls it after a delay. Right? Right? So now, abhi, if I take this, right, this for loop, and if I put it in here, if I put it in here, and even though if I increase this, right, यहाँ पे zero increase भी कर दूँ, I have a definite time कि this function will run after 10 seconds, right? So by then 1 will print and 3 will print. It will not interfere with these two pieces of code, right? Are we sure about that? है ना? So that's how we deal with asynchronous JavaScript. So you'll just see after 10 seconds, we'll just print this, right? But again, we don't have anything to see कि ये loop complete हुआ है या नहीं. So what I'm gonna do is once this loop is done ना, I'm gonna do console.log completed, right? So now let's go and refresh it. We have printed 1, we have printed 3, and after 10 seconds, we'll print something else. ओके, ये लूप थोड़ा ज्यादा टाइम ले रहा है. I'll decrease 1 0 from. ठीक, चल अभी रिफ्रेश करते हैं. ठीक, तो आफ्टर 10 seconds it's getting completed. Clear. So now how can we use this? It's simple. Let's say we are again we are creating our application, right? So application create करने में we are gonna create our front end side. हम तो अपना front end बना देंगे, right? Now this front end is gonna run on a for each, right? Or rather not for each, it's gonna run on an array, right? I'm gonna loop over this array. I'm gonna create elements, right? And I'm gonna print stuff, right? Abhi kya hoga? This array is gonna be given to us from backend, yes or no? For now, we are using local storage and all, but later when we're creating full stack applications, we'll be getting this data from backend, right? Right. So now again, this backend data will be there in form of a link, right? So एक link होगा. If we access that link, we'll get this backend data. Again, getting millions of data from this link takes time, right? It may be 2 seconds for someone. It may be 3 seconds for someone. If your internet speed is slow, it might even take 10 seconds for someone else. Right? But let's say कि if you're loading image and then यहाँ पे आपका video है and then below you have another suggested videos. These are nothing but thumbnails with descriptions, right? Thumbnails with descriptions. So does it happens on YouTube कि आपका your search bar loads even though your video is loading yet you're able to see maybe comments or these thumbnails दिखता है? दिखता है? Right? So we are going for asynchronous programming. We are running 1 and 3 instantly, and 2 को we are giving it time कि हाँ आप load हो जाओ. Right? So that buffer that is applied using this asynchronous JavaScript. Right? So we're learning this basically to talk with our front end and back end to finally be able to use something which is called fetch. Right? So tomorrow, in tomorrow's session, we'll learn more about fetch, what is all that and all. But is this clear कि why and how are we going there? पहुंच कैसे रहे हैं, कैसे use पे जाएंगे, and like why would we need it? I hope that's clear. right? Is loading feature work same? Yes, somewhat it works same. Basically loading feature में क्या होता है, like up until this thing is loading ना, आप क्या करते हो, you take a variable flag, right? And this flag is by default false. जैसे ही this loading is done, you'll make this flag as true, right? तो जब तक your flag is false, you will show a loader, right? You guys might have seen कि एक circle keeps on rotating and all, right? So this is loading your multimedia or something, right? Loading logo or something that you apply, and Jesse flag is true, this thing will be removed and video will start. Clear? So that's the logic that goes behind. Okay. So everyone, guys, is this clear? How do we use asynchronous JavaScript? And one of the example of implementing asynchronous JavaScript is that network का issue नहीं रहता है, network का issue रहता है ना. That's why we need asynchronous JavaScript. Okay, let me show you something. Let's say if we visit Flipkart, right? Flipkart पे visit किया. Now there is a possibility that these things are of big files, right? ये बड़े files हैं. So if I keep on scrolling, you guys will see कि there is a loading feature that is taking place. Yes or no? If you haven't observed it, let's do one thing. I'm gonna go and inspect network tab, and I'll apply a slow 3G. Right? So my internet connection को bottleneck कर रहा हूँ. Now, if I refresh this page, so if I refresh this page, you'll see that some images are still loading, right? But footer we are still able to see. Footer दिख रहा है हमें already. We are seeing upper things. Whatever is loading, it's loading in its own time, right? We are not stopping next line of code for it. Okay? So that's where your asynchronous JavaScript comes in hand, right? So let's fix this. Let's keep it no throttling. So yeah, you can actually do that. All you have to do is you have to visit inspect. Usme you will have to visit your next network section. It's actually good if you go and try to explore how what these things actually do, right? So fetch will learn about it tomorrow, but for now you can go in here and you can enable disable things. Clear? Chalo. So back in here, I have a small piece of code for you guys, which you have to tell me what will be the output. Let me find it. Actually, I've written it. So just give me a second. Yeah. So if I paste this piece of code here, right? So basically, यहाँ पे क्या किया है? I have written a console which says program starts here. Then I have 3 different functions which have some name, right? And then I have applied set timeout with the function's name and time in seconds or milliseconds. Milliseconds, right? So can you guys tell me what will be the final output? What will be, like, we have 5 consoles, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 consoles. So what will be the final output of these consoles? Okay. So like I can see some answers. So basically starts here, everyone agrees that this thing is gonna print first, very first. Starts here, right? Then are we gonna run this Maruti 800, Mercedes, or BMW? So first, like this Mercedes, it takes 2 milliseconds, right? So are we expecting this to complete first? Are we expecting this to complete first? Okay, then BMW ends, so we'll put it there, right? Then finally your Maruti 800 will be there, right? One console which is basically ends here is missing. Where will I place it? You have 80, 81, 82, 83. Take the line number and tell me after which should I place it. Correct, correct. So just after line number 80, we are gonna print ends here, right? And then these set timeout will apply. Clear? So chalo, let's go and see what we are getting in output. So yeah. So if I again refresh it, we have program starts here, ends here. First we're getting Mercedes, and we're getting BMW, and then finally we are getting money. Clear है? Clear है? ये synchronous है या asynchronous? This is asynchronous, right? So synchronous JavaScript runs everything line by line. So if this was synchronous, it's gonna print program start here, then it's gonna come to line number 74 and first print Maruti 800, right? Then Mercedes, then BMW, and then finally ends here, right? But we have used set timeout, which is your asynchronous, right? So abhi kya hoga? We're gonna go for different things. Asynchronous JS, right? What if time is same for two set timeouts? Very good question. Okay. So if I put 2 and 2 here, now what? Now, good question, Nikhil. Abhi no delay. Okay. 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 So are we print first thing first? Starts here will print. सबसे पहले, very first, right? Then should we print ends here or should we start with Maruti? Ends here, right? As soon as we have used this keyword, no, this method set timeout, we have given JavaScript instruction ki this function is asynchronous. Skip this, take this thing out, print everything after this first, right? So starts here and ends here will print first, then we'll print Maruti, Mercedes, and BMW. Clear hai? Clear hai? So now if I go in here and if I refresh, na, you'll see program starts here, ends here is there, and then Maruti, Mercedes, and BMW. As expected. ठीक है? ठीक है? So this is one example of asynchronous JavaScript. Now you guys might have seen an usage of set timeout in your applications, right? So let's say if you're visiting a platform, do you guys often get a subscribe ka notification after maybe 15-20 seconds? मिलता है क्या? So basically they have a alert system, right? Which basically says subscribe. Right? But क्या होता है? This alert system is wrapped inside set timeout with some timeout, right? With a certain timeout. So let's say 5,000, right? I'm writing a callback function and I'm calling it instantly. Is this a way to do it or should we wrap it? Wrap कर दूं? In anonymous function, right? We should not be calling callbacks directly. So I'm gonna wrap this thing, right? And I'm gonna wrap it. Alert गायब हो गया. Okay, fine. I just take this and I'll write alert. Take. So now if I visit, where's my website? If I visit my website, if I refresh it, तो हम अपने website पे visit कर चुके हैं, and after 5 seconds, I'll get a notification which says subscribe. Right? So it's one of the examples where you use this set time. Clear है? Clear है? 2000 day और उसके अंदर loop use करे like so which and another async 3000. Okay, so I'm not sure if you guys are getting exactly what's going in here. देख चल. So let's assume कि हमने एक database से we are taking data, right? And this data taking is taking around 15 seconds, right? So basically we are getting database se data and it's taking 15 seconds, right? Now we are doing this inside a function which we are calling get data, right? This data getting thing we are doing in a function which is called get data. We have written set timeout here and this calls that function get data after 5 seconds, right? 5,000 milliseconds. So given that this database gives you data in 15 seconds, 5 seconds में complete हो जाएगा this function. What do you guys think? It won't get completed, right? So basically set timeout is there to call this function after a certain time. अब वो function को कितना time लगता है? It takes 15 seconds to complete, it takes 10 seconds to complete. That's on function, right? So let's say if you're running a page, after 5 seconds of delay, this get data function will be called, and once this function is called, it will call this database, and it's going to take another 15 seconds. So overall, finally, we are taking 20 seconds to load our data, right? ऐसे काम कर रहा है. It's not like जैसे ही this thing is running, even though it takes 20 seconds or 15 seconds, that's it. So how do we decide this function take 20 or 30 seconds? Yes. So Gaurav, that's the problem statement which has to be fixed. For that, we bring something which is called promises. थोड़ी देर में discuss करेंगे. But are you guys already seeing a loophole in set timeout for using database का data? Right? The loophole is that we are not sure कि set timeout कितना time लेगा. Right? How much time is it gonna take? We're not expecting कि it's gonna complete in 15 seconds, 20 seconds, right? So yeah, that's one of the loopholes. That's why we don't usually use set timeout for getting database se data. We go for something which is called promises. But anyways, promises jab aayega, we'll cover it. Itna baat clear hai ki what is set timeout, how are we using it, or what might be the applications? You guys can think of more applications. That's completely on you guys, like counter applications and all. So you can think of. राइट चलो तो उसी तरीके से सेट टाइम आउट के जगह लाइक सेट टाइम आउट के साथ वी हैव अनदर फंक्शन और मेथड व्हिच इज कॉल्ड सेट इंटरवल. राइट व्हाट माइट दिस डू? कैन एनीवन टेल मी? लाइक लास्ट वन वाज टाइम आउट, राइट? तो इट वाज गिविंग अ टाइम आउट टू अ फंक्शन फॉर सम टाइम. दिस थिंग इज कॉल्ड इंटरवल. व्हाट डज इंटरवल मींस? इंटरवल का मतलब क्या होता है? ब्रेक, रिपीटेशन, ओके, पॉज, ठीक है, repeating after time. Correct, correct. So let's say if we are printing something, right? And after some time we have to again print that, right? Can anyone tell me कहाँ पे use होता है? Lab. Very good, very good. So you guys know about races, right? Right. तो race में क्या होता है? Race में क्या होता है? Like we have a track, right? We have a track. एक single track होता है, and इसमें गाड़ियाँ रेस लगाएगी, right? So here's the checkpoint. Every bike will go, and whoever comes here first wins. But there is a system which is called laps. इसमें क्या होता है? It's not कि whoever comes first wins. Whoever completes the most lap with. So let's say there are 4 laps. इसका मतलब they have to start from this checkpoint. यहाँ से they'll complete 1 lap once they're visiting this once. उसके बाद second time they'll have to complete this, third time and fourth time. जो भी fourth time first complete कर लेगा, they'll win the match. So that's basically laps, right? तो वही चीज basically after certain interval we are running things, right? So let's say कि if you have a function and you have to call it after every 5 seconds. So how can we do that? By using set interval, right? So let's say I have a function and it's called printer, right? And it console.log prints hi there. But मुझे क्या करना है? I have to print this thing every 5 seconds. So what I'll do is I'll go and use set interval. इसमें I'll pass my printer function and I'll give it some time. So let's say after every 4 milliseconds. Take, so let's visit here. If I refresh it, after 4 seconds, we're printing hi there. Then again, first say after 4 seconds, we'll print again hi. Right? So that's how we use this thing. It moves like interval, right? So we can have, let's say we have a I, which is 0, and we're printing hi there I, and ye karne ke baad we are doing a I plus plus, right? So now if we are visiting here, first we'll print, let's make it 2 milliseconds. Actually, it's taking a lot of time. So first we'll print hi there 0, then we'll print hi there 1, then we'll print hi there 2. है ना? Right? And let's say if I make it 1 milliseconds, so it will be like a counter. Her second 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Right? So let's say कि I'm giving you guys a small problem statement. उसमें क्या होता है? You have to create not this, create let me scroll up, a button. Once click, it should start attack. Now can we create this? जैसे ही button click हुआ, we're gonna set this thing out. We're gonna start the timer. है ना? So yeah, we can do it in that fashion. ठीक है? तो again, set interval and set timeout makes sense. Everyone समझ आता है? Right? Use case, again, multiple use cases like use case क्या हो सकता है इसका? Think about it. Again, let's say clock is one of the use cases, but I wasn't going for stopwatch and clock क्योंकि वो तो हम already करते रहते हैं, right? Let's say rating system, right? Rating system. So if you're using an application for आधा घंटा, right? Half an hour. And in that application, after every 5 seconds, अगर आप rate नहीं करते हो तो it might pop up rating system again, right? Also video system, yeah, correct. So we can create presentation also, right? Slideshow, very good. So what we can do is we can have a image ka box, right? And we can have a array with images, right? So array में we have multiple images. हम क्या करेंगे? You guys have seen this, how we can increase the index, right? So after every 2 seconds, जो image.src है, we are updating it with array ka dynamic index. So by doing this, can I not change the image every 2 seconds? Will I be creating a slideshow? Right? So yeah, these are applications that you can use. Right? It's going to be very simple. All you have to do is you have to apply it. What is the difference between set timeout and set interval? Set timeout does things after a certain break, right? So if you are using set timeout, यहाँ पे करते हैं, it might take me a long time, but ठीक है. यहाँ पे let's say I have a function which is called printer, right? And this does a console.log print, right? Print. So if I use set timeout and I call printer with it with a 2 seconds delay, what's going to happen? This function is going to be called after 2 seconds, right? And it will print console.log print. That's all. That's the work of timeout. But if you go and apply set interval, what's going to happen? A set interval. And if you write printer and then 2 milliseconds, what's going to happen? After every 2 seconds, this set interval is going to print. Clear? So set timeout prints things after a delay, but set interval prints things after an interval. Like a loop, but with a time. Clear है? Clear है? Clear है? Now this thing is gonna run till infinity. Right? ये तो infinity चलता रहेगा up until you clear it. Right? So for clearing it, you have to use something which is called clear interval. Now this is a very small and very easy thing जो कि ये दोनों में use होता है. Right? So set interval will be cleared by clear interval and set timeout will be cleared by clear timing. Like इसको तो आपको clear करने की जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी, clear interval को clear करने हैं. So this thing, go and search this in MDL. Right? Trust me, it's very easy. Right? But try it. एक बार try करना. Because there's a small catch which is यहाँ पे ID पे catch है. राइट. सो आई वांट यू गाइस टू थिंक अबाउट इट, थोड़ा दिमाग लगाओ. अगर नहीं समझ आता है तो विल डिस्कस इट इन नेक्स्ट सेशन, बट गो एंड फाइंड आउट अबाउट क्लियर इंटरवल. क्लियर मींस बोथ आर सेम, नॉट एग्जैक्टली सेट. अरे यार अगेन देखो, set timeout will run this printer function after a delay of 2 seconds, right? But if you're let me just show you. So if I go and refresh it, right? So we're gonna write print after a delay of 2 seconds. But if I uncomment this code and if I comment out this one, abhi kya hoga? After like 2 seconds, it's gonna print this print. It's gonna keep on printing it. Right? So set interval print in time somewhat, yes. Clear? So set interval keeps on printing after a certain delay. Set timeout will print once after a certain delay. Right? So again, here's the difference. Prints once after a certain delay and keeps on printing after a certain delay. ठीक, इसको कोई पॉइंट पे रोकना हो, you'll write a condition and you'll do a clear interval, right? And I'll tell you about this in next session if you guys need to, but go and find about it on MDN. Clear interval is very easy thing. A catch is there, which is here, ID, right? So just think about it, go find कैसे काम. अभी नहीं, आराम से सेशन के. Clear? चलो, तो let's do one thing. Let's take a break here and after that we'll start with promises. ठीक है? So yeah, let's take a break. Take a break of 5 minutes and we'll come back. Is everyone back? So I hope अभी तक जो भी we have covered regarding asynchronous JavaScript that was clear, right? I know it's a bit of theory, but आज theory पढ़ लो, tomorrow we'll be applying these things in practical, right? ठीक है. Why or when I might do we need clear timeout? If I'm clear interval, right? So clear interval actually makes sense. Ki why might we want a clear interval, right? Let's say if we are going for a timer, so it's starting and then I want to stop it, so I'll go with clear interval. But clear timeout कब use करोगे? Let's say कि if you are going for a function, right? Let's say कि let's visit this page. यहाँ पे you have a website, right? And after every whenever user visits, after 10 seconds na, you give them this notification of subscription. But let's say the user is already subscribed. In his case, timeout should not be there, right? So in that case, we should be going with clear time. Make sense? Right? So that's somewhere that you can use. We give some time user to load their data or function. It works after a delayed timer. So yeah, it works after a delayed time for timeout. Check. So again, whoever is confused, key, let's say if there is a function, right, and this is db function, and this function is function को complete होने में this takes 10 seconds of time, right? I have done a set timeout, and in this I'm calling this db function with 5000 milliseconds. So will this 10 second जो function ले रहा है, will it complete in 5 seconds? Yes or no? No. तो क्या होगा? Set timeout क्या करेगा? After delay of 5 seconds, it's gonna call this db function. After a delay of 5 seconds, and उसके बाद to run this function will take its own time of 10 seconds. Clear? Am I not audible, folks? Am I audible or not, guys? Oh. So might be an issue from your side. Maybe increase your volume. Everyone else can hear. ठीक. अच्छा चलो. So next step will be again, guys. थोड़ा सा theory होगा. So try to focus up a bit for this section, right? यहाँ के लिए थोड़ा सा focus रखो. ठीक. Because I'll have to tell you guys about something which is called event loop. So I can go for event loop with just call stack, but it won't do you guys justice without knowing about something which is called execution context. ठीक. तो थोड़ा सा fast रहेगा, but again I'll try to make it as simple as possible. थोड़ा सा focus रखो. ठीक है. चलो. So and वो जब complete हो जाएगा ना, then I'll take doubts. So for 15 minutes, let's go for the theory and then I'll take doubts. ठीक. तो चलो. So let's write few code again. Let's say कि var a equals to 10 and we have let b equals to 20 and we have a function which is called parent, and this function takes callback, and यहाँ पे it has let sum equals to a plus b, and what it does is it basically let call equals to callback to it, calls it at it sends the sum in it, right, and it finally prints the call. Take. Now let's create a function and it's called add, right? And or rather we call it print. Take. And this print takes value and it just does is it returns value into 10, right? And we go in here and यहाँ पे I'm calling this parent with this print. Take. Now this is an example of callback function. I hope you guys remember callback functions. right? Higher order functions and callback functions, guys. So it's one of these example. So in line number 145, what am I gonna print? What will be the output of this code? Okay, undefined. Anything else? So let's start with line number 145, right? It's calling a function which is called parent. And in this parent function, we are writing something which is called print. What is this print? Is it this function? Right? So are we sending an entire function in a function? Is this a callback function? Print callback function, right? Now we're accepting this print in here, yahan pe, in format of callback. So hum inherently aren't we writing let call equals to print ke andar sum? Are we doing this? Are we doing this? Everyone, yes or no? सब बोलो आराम से देखो फिर बताओ ऑफ कोर्स ठीक so we're calling this print function and in which I'm sending a plus b which is 10 plus 20 which is 30 right तो मैं print function में I'm sending 30 right now this print function takes a value for now which is 30 and it multiplies it by 10 right so ये print sum is gonna return you guys 300 or not right and finally I'm doing a console.log which is 300. All right. So if I go in here, am I getting 300? Right. If I make this b equals to 30, what will I get? $400. Right. ठीक है. तो जिनको नहीं समझ आया एक और बार देखो. In line number 48, we are calling this parent function. Right. Just let me just remove this thing for now. We're just calling parent function. So we are calling this function. Everyone. जो नहीं समझ आया अभी समझाता हूँ. But are we calling this entire function? Right now JavaScript may I hope you guys remember that functions are first class citizens, right? So they can be passed as arguments. So I'm taking this print function and I'm passing it as an argument, right? So this print function this entirety में यहाँ पे आ रहा है, right? Let me show you. If I do a console.log of callback, right? This callback and I'll comment this one out. If I go here, it will print that entire function. Right? So this callback is basically this entire function, whatever function that we are passing in here. Print pass kar rahe ho, so this is this entire thing. Now, what we are doing is line number 138 mein, we're calling this print function and we're passing a value which is sum, which is a plus b. Right? So sum, whatever value we are accepting, kya return kar rahe hain? Value into 10. Right? So if it's 10 plus 20, we're finally returning 300. If it's 10 plus 30, we're finally returning 10. Okay. Why do we need two long function? I'll show you, but like, is the working clear? Why and how I'll talk about that, but working clear है? Because I have to explain you a theory of something which is called call stack. ठीक तो for that I have to just create this logic. चलो so अभी क्या होगा? Let's take this function. What happens in JavaScript, be it asynchronous or synchronous, JavaScript का एक property होता है, it creates environment or context for everything, right? So what's gonna happen is, ये जो piece of code है ना, this piece of code, it's gonna create an execution context like this, right? And इसमें भी we are gonna have two different phases, right? Okay, messed it up. ठीक. इसमें भी we have two different phases. This is called execution context, right? Let me just type it out. Execution context, right? For every piece of code, JavaScript ka, this thing is created, and these has two things. First is your creation phase, and second one is basically your execution phase, right? तो क्रिएशन फेज में क्या होता है ना, द वेरिएबल्स एंड फंक्शंस गिव देयर अटेंडेंस, राइट। होस्टिंग सुनी है आपने, होस्टिंग सुनिए, right? So that hoisting happens here. Basically what happens, every variable which has var keyword in it is created here, right? So a is created using var, a will be created, but a को ना एक placeholder value दी जाती है जिसको बोलते हैं undefined, right? उसी तरीके से do we have any other way var? No, right? उतने से कोड में we don't have any other var, so nothing else will be there. Then comes your functions, right? So your parent function is there. This will be stored entirety of the function. ये पूरा का पूरा function store कर लेगा whatever is in there, right? Same thing goes for your print value, right? So it won't be here, but ये parent रहेगा, ठीक। And then comes the execution phase. Execution phase में क्या होता है? We start running the codes, right? So पहले तो we have defined it with a placeholder value. Now we'll give them values. Now you might have a question कि a is defined as undefined. Let वाले variables का क्या हुआ? So these let and const वाले variables, no? Let and const वाले variables जो है hoisting और execution context में creation doesn't happen with these keywords, right? So they are basically, they are sent at a hypothetical place called temporal dead zone, right? तो ये दोनों चीजें ना, let and const, they are sent somewhere which is called temporal dead zone. So that's why what happens ना, when a is defined, it's defined with undefined. तो अभी क्या होगा, if you write a console of a here ना, you'll get undefined rather than error, right? But if you do a console of b before defining it, you'll get an error because it does not exist in creation phase, right? The creation phase goes through each and every line of code and it creates a attendance of someone. Then in execution phase, everything starts to run, right? The execution phase में क्या होगा? This a will be given a value of 10 and b will be given a value of 20 directly without even defining undefined, and your parent function will be called, right? So here parent function is being called. Now, the thing is that parent function is being called with a new function, print. Yes, everyone? Yes. तो अभी क्या होगा? Now this thing will create another execution context, right? तो उस function में एक और execution context बनेगा just for these things, right? तो इसके अंदर again these two features are gonna take place. Creation and execution phase are gonna take place. Once the attendance will be taken, so attendance, we don't have any variable in there except for callback. So callback will be there, right? And finally we'll be just printing and summing the values. So this will be a plus 10, and finally we'll be doing a callback, and उसके अंदर we'll be passing the sum, right? So every function is going to create its own context, right? So for better understanding, let me show you Python tutor. So this is one of the tools that is being used to visualize a code, right? So यहाँ पे हम क्या करेंगे? We're going to paste our code, right? चलो यहाँ पे I'll paste my this piece of code and I'll write visualize x. ठीक, अभी I'm gonna make it small. I hope this is visible to everyone, right? ठीक, तो अभी क्या हो रहा है? Now we are at very first line, right? So now a execution context will be created globally and वहां पे a will be defined with what? Undefined के साथ, right? Because a is defined with var. उसके बाद let वाले सारे variables are defined in temporal dead zone, right? So hypothetical place है, we don't need that. If I click on next, अभी क्या होगा? Now previous में जाते हैं. So अभी क्या होगा? Your a is defined, your parent is defined, your parent is defined. right? So variable with var, yeah, your notes, I'm pretty sure you guys are going to forget that. So I'm just going to write it in note format. Every JS code will create a execution context, right? Here, hoisting slash attendance is done for just var and functions, right? First point clear है? First point everyone clear है? Right? This is just theory, nothing else. Right? Then second point is that basically your let and const are not defined in context. It's defined where? Temporal dead zone. Right? That's why you get an error rather than undefined. ठीक है? Then the next step will be basically if I click on next, अभी क्या होगा? Your A will get a value, right? Which is of 10. And if I click on next, your B will get a value of 20. If I click on next, finally, अभी क्या होगा? Variables खत्म हो गए, right? So A and B were the variables we were giving them. Now in line number 19, we are calling parent function with another callback function which is called print, right? So parent function is being called and उसके साथ we are creating another context, right? So in this parent function, we have an argument which is called callback. वो भी वेरिएबल की तरह डिफाइन होगा. We have a variable which is called sum and we have a variable which is called call. तो वो तीनों डिफाइन. Now if I click on next, sum will get a value of 30. If I click on next, call के लिए now we are passing print, we are calling another function, right? तो एक और context create हुआ and we are giving it a value of 30, right? Next, return value is 300. And everything now will start ending. तो ये context जो है, these will start destroying, right? If I click on next, वो context खत्म हो गया. Parent has a value of 300. Call के पास 300. If I click on next, finally return value is undefined because we are not returning anything. We are just directly consoling. Clear how line by line the code is working? Link I'll paste it in your notes, right? Notes में whatever application I'm going to use, I'll share them. राइट. तो ये क्लियर हुआ कि हाउ द कोड इज रनिंग फ्रॉम टॉप टू बॉटम, राइट. अभी जो है ना, हाउ दीज थिंग्स आर बीइंग टेकन केयर कि कौन से फंक्शन के अंदर कौन सा फंक्शन जा रहा है. देयर इज अ थिंग व्हिच इज कॉल्ड कॉल स्टैक, राइट. एक चीज होती है जिसको बोलते हैं कॉल स्टैक, राइट. सो देयर इज अ थिंग व्हिच इज कॉल्ड कॉल स्टैक. नाउ यू गाइस हैवंट डन डीएसए येट. किया है क्या? Do you guys are done with DSA or not? Like, I'm not sure this part. Little bit. All right. So you are aware about stack or not? Okay, never mind. I'll just explain it from scratch only. So stack is basically a kind of data structure, right? इस data structure में क्या होता है? It follows a principle which is called first in, last out. या फिर last in, first out. ये दोनों होता है, right? So basically, let's say कि if I'm sending one in this, right? So one will be here. Then if I'm sending second in this, second will be there. Then if I'm sending three in this, three will be there, right? So एक tube लिया and you have put it one ball, two ball and three ball. So if you want to remove the balls, which one will you remove first? अगर मैं bottle को टेढ़ा करता हूँ तो which will I remove first? I'll remove three first, right? तो three पहले remove होगा. Then we are gonna remove two. Then finally we are gonna remove one. So this is stack, right? This data structure is called stack, जहाँ पे last element which is sent in the stack comes out first. So last in, first out, or first in जो सबसे पहले गया, it's gonna come out last. So first in, last out. Right? So basic idea behind stack is clear. What stack is, what it does, right? You don't have to understand how we can use stack. Just functionality समझ आनी चाहिए. So we have a thing which is called call stack, right? And it is there for your callback functions only, right? So let's say I have a function, right? It's called A. A के अंदर I have another function which is called B, and B के अंदर I have another function which is called C, right? These are the functions. These are the functions. तो अभी क्या होगा? If I call A very first, A will be called a function कॉल होगा, राइट. in this a function I go and call b. तो अभी क्या होगा, inside a is not done yet, right? Inside a again b will be called, and finally b के अंदर I'm calling c. तो inside this c I'm finally calling c, right? So सबसे पहले which function is gonna get completed very first? जो सबसे अंदर है, राइट. तो वेरी फर्स्ट दिस सी इज गना गेट कंप्लीटेड. उसके बाद बी विल बी गेट कंप्लीटेड, एंड वन दिस पीस ऑफ कोड इज डन रनिंग, फाइनली ए विल बी डन, राइट. तो दिस इज बेसिकली हाउ योर कॉल स्टैक एक्चुअली वर्क्स. ठीक. सो अभी क्या है, गाइस कॉल स्टैक सबको क्लियर है, एवरीवन? देन इफ इट्स क्लियर देन आई कैन डायरेक्टली मूव टू इवेंट लूप. ठीक. अच्छा चलो, सो विल बी डिस्कसिंग एक पुराना वाला एग्जांपल है. So let's say I have this piece of code, right? You guys remember this? याद है किसी को? This one, right? So अभी क्या होगा? Now keep this thing in mind. This console dot log. It's a method. It takes an argument. So what is it? Finally, is it a function? Dot log. It's a method. Finally, it's a function, right? JavaScript object में एक function है. So call stack में this console will be called, right? I've created a bad call stack. यहाँ. ठीक. So very first this thing will be sent inside, right? But inside this console do we have any other function running? कोई और function run कर रहा है क्या? No, no. So it will be just gone and it will be sent outside, right? तो अभी क्या होगा? One will be sent outside. ठीक. Then comes this line. Now it won't run, it won't run, it won't run up until function is called, right? ये पूरी चीज skip हो जाएगी. क्यों? क्योंकि we have gone for asynchronous programming. So again we are gonna enter this and we are gonna print this and we are gonna send it outside. Is there any dependency in this? इसके अंदर कोई function लिखा है? No, right? Now it's time to start entering these things, right? So let's say कि I'm going for set timeout Maruti 800, right? Guys, I'm gonna skip these two. I'm just gonna talk about this, right? तो अभी के लिए ये समझते first. So Maruti 800, if I call this function, right? So I'm just gonna call it as m. So this function is starting to run. Now do we have another function inside that function? Do we have a console? A console statement है. Dot log is a function. So first this console dot log will print, right? And ये बाहर होगा. उसके बाद Maruti 800 function will be done running, right? तो I hope call stack कैसे काम कर रहा है, that is clear. ठीक. Yeah, in this first in first out condition is applied, right? Right. But जब asynchronous programming होता है ना, so there is something applied which is called event loop, right? To explain you guys, let me show you one more website. It's a good one. Loop latent flip, right? Again, I'll share these both links with you guys. You don't have to worry about it. Let's go in here and let me just close it. यहाँ पे I'm gonna paste my code, right? We're gonna paste our code. I hope we remember output क्या था. Do you guys remember output? Right? Right? मतलब एक प्रॉपर रन होगा तब दूसरे पे जाएगा. Yes, yes, but timing depends, right? I'll show you. अभी समझ आ जाएगा. So we have a call stack here. We have a call stack here. Everyone, call stack है, right? So just for the sake of understanding a function, we are just taking this function, nothing else. We're not talking about delay or anything. We're just talking about function. If Maruti function comes in here, will it end before this console running or it will still be there? It will still be there. First, this console will come here. ये complete होगा, उसके बाद this function will get complete. This will apply for Mercedes and BMW also or not? Yes or no? Right? चलो चलो. So call stack का function आपको clear है. What's this web API? Web API is basically these set timeout, right? So set timeout will be sent inside web API, right? अभी क्या करता हूँ? Let's just run this function and let's see what happens. So if I save and run, console prints, then set timeout Maruti comes, Mercedes comes, and BMW comes. उसके बाद we are printing program in BMW is done first. BMW आया, फिर कंसोल आया, कंसोल रिमूव हुआ, देन BMW रिमूव, राइट? तो कॉल स्टैक दिखा क्या किसी को? बाकी क्या हुआ उसके बारे में भूल जाओ. Whatever happened other than call stack, just forget about it. I'll run it many more times, but just remember call stack. First, the function is gonna be called, then the function inside is gonna get completed, then only this will be removed, then only this will be removed. Right? Again, I'm gonna run it. Just don't think about web API and callback queue yet. I'm just gonna rerun it. Right? Think about call stack for me. राइट? अभी देखना, अभी मर्सिडीज आएगा, कंसोल रिमूव हुआ, देन मर्सिडीज विल रिमूव. मारुति आएगा, कंसोल विल देयर रिमूव, देन BMW आएगा, कंसोल विल रिमूव, देन क्लियर? तो कॉल स्टैक की फंक्शनैलिटी क्लियर है, कैसे काम कर रहे हैं, राइट? बट एक और चीज प्ले में है यहाँ, राइट? सो अगेन यू रिमेंबर दिस डायग्राम 1, 3 and 2. ये डायग्राम याद है, right? So basically we were running first function and third function instantly. Second one was async, so we have given it to somewhere which is called browser, right? JS was taking help of browser. Browser में किसका help ले रहा था? Web API, right? So basically if I go and run a call stack on this thing, 1 will print, 1 will be sent outside, 3 will print, 3 will be sent outside. 2 के साथ क्या होगा? 2 will be sent in web API, right? And it will wait for a turn here only, right? तो अगर 5 सेकेंड का डिले है, it will stay in here for 5 seconds. ठीक? उसके बाद क्या होगा? We have something which is called callback queue. Once this 5 second is complete, na, this thing is gonna send inside this queue. तो जिस तरीके से stack had a rule first in last out, right? और last in first out, जो last में गया वो पहले बाहर आएगा. Queue में क्या होता है? Whichever enters first, ना, removes first, right? तो first in first out principle applies in queue. So if 2 enters in queue first, it will be removed first. Now this queue is called callback queue. Callback queue. Right? अभी इसकी क्यों जरूरत है यहाँ पर? So let's say you have a function 1 which has a delay of 2 seconds. You have a function 2 which has a delay of 4 seconds. You have a function 3 which has a delay of 5 seconds. Right? Now web API में I'm gonna send 1, 2 and 3. 1, 2 and 3 में से which function is gonna get completed first? 1, 2 seconds लगते हैं. So अभी क्या होगा? 1 will be sent inside this callback queue. उसके बाद कौन सा function complete होगा? 2. Then 2 will be sent inside this callback queue. Then finally 3 gets complete. 3 will be sent. Right? Now we again are gonna go for call stack, and in this call stack we are gonna send 1. Right? एक बार 1 is done running, we'll send 2. Once 2 is done running, we'll send 3. Right? तो is it clear कि एक थ्रेड के साथ दूसरा थ्रेड कैसे कनेक्टेड है? वेब एपीआई एंड कॉलबैक क्यू कैसे हेल्प कर रहे हैं? राइट? तो दैट्स ओनली व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू शो हियर. यहाँ पे these are the function which are gonna take time, right? तो वो क्या हो रहा है? They are gonna send in call stack, and यहाँ से they are gonna directly send somewhere which is called this web API. Here they will wait for their turn, right? They will wait for their turn, and once this is done, once the time is done, they'll send in callback queue, and finally callback queue से एक-एक करके they'll be sent in call stack and remove. Sent in call stack, removed. Sent in call stack, right? तो flow clear है? फ्लो क्लियर है? बीच में कुछ कंडीशन रॉन्ग हुआ, आपका कोड रुक जाएगा, you'll get an error. रन टाइम पे एरर मिलता है ना, राइट? तो यू गेट इट. इतना बात क्लियर है, राइट? सो अभी क्या हो रहा है ना, दिस एंटायर थिंग, जो पूरा का पूरा सेटअप जो चल रहा है, इट्स बीइंग मैनेज्ड बाय दिस सर्कल, राइट? आई एम गोना रन दिस पीस ऑफ कोड अगेन. अभी द नॉलेज ऑफ वेब एपीआई एंड कॉलबैक, यू ट्राई थिंकिंग इन दैट टर्म्स, राइट? I'll again start it, right? I'll pause it, take resume, right? Take, I'll pause it here. Take, अरे यार pause हो जा भाई. Okay, I might not be able to pause it here. चलो, let me rerun it again, right? So console will get printed. Maruti is sent here, Mercedes and BMW, right? Mercedes will be there, Maruti will be there, and BMW will be there. जैसे जैसे उनका टाइम आ रहा है, they'll get completed and they'll be sent in pause time. क्लियर है? क्लियर है, राइट? तो जो ये मैनेज कर रहा है ना, दिस लूप दैट इज रनिंग, दिस इज कॉल्ड इवेंट. ठीक, नथिंग एल्स. जो मैनेज करता है द सेंडिंग ऑफ फंक्शन फ्रॉम कॉल स्टैक टू वेब एपीआई टू कॉल बैक क्यू एंड कॉल बैक क्यू टू कॉल स्टैक अगेन, राइट? दिस इज डन बाय समथिंग व्हिच इज कॉल्ड इवेंट लूप. क्लियर? ऑफ कोर्स आई विल रन इट अगेन, राइट? तो रीरन इट. ठीक है, क्लियर? अगेन गाइस, यहाँ पे वी हैव जस्ट गिवन अ सेकेंड ऑफ डिले, राइट? तो सेकेंड ऑफ डिले में क्या हो रहा है, इट्स शोइंग समथिंग हियर एंड इट्स वेटिंग फॉर इट. So rather than going for just a second of delay, I should have gone with 2 or 3 seconds of delay. Then only this function will work properly here, इस application में, right? Instantly run नहीं हो रहा है, it's showing something here. तो if you wanna go for proper way, give it a delay, right? मारुति अगर पहले प्रिंट हो रहा है तो उसको थोड़ा सा बड़ा डिले दो, तब आपको एक बेटर आइडिया, राइट? तो लेट्स से कि मैं मारुति को आई एम गिविंग इट 7 seconds of delay, 7,000, and तो Mercedes को 1, right? तो if I save and run now, अभी क्या होगा, you'll have a Maruti which will wait for 7 seconds. Mercedes will be done, BMW will be done, right? And then Maruti will. ठीक, it's taking some time here, that's why the delay is. ठीक है मुल्केश, वही है बात ना कि the application is a bit delayed itself, right? Application में it's showing things here. तो rather than giving it 1 second का delay, 1 second का difference, I'm giving it bit more difference. So you can see now. अभी clear होगा, right? अभी Maruti is not going faster. If I resume again, you'll see, right? Clear? Clear everyone? So this is event loop. If someone asks, this is what event loop does. It manages how async code goes from call stack to web API to callback queue, and back to call stack. Right? It follows some small rules, right? तो event loop के पास छोटे से rules है. It's nothing big. It's very pretty clear. For event loop to run, your call stack should be empty, right? That's by default clear, right? ये तो clear है कि call stack empty होगा तभी your callback queue will run, right? Why so? Because first all the synchronous code should get printed, then only asynchronous code should start. Make sense, right? Make sense? Make sense? And for this loop to run, callback queue में भी कुछ होना चाहिए. Something should be there in callback queue, right? तो यहाँ पे 2 conditions लगती है. One is call stack should be empty, and condition आ जाती है call back queue should not be empty, right? Your event clear? Line number 13 makes sense? ठीक है, तो that's event loop for you guys. इसका technical definition will be there in notes. If not, you can check MDN. But technical definitions are the first. It's important to get that thing, right? So event loop, have you gotten it? What it is in gist? right? So that's basically it. So, whoever hasn't gotten, you might have to watch the recording. Right? Again, it's not something that we usually cover in half an hour, right? Half an hour, this should not be covered. But again, for explaining you guys event loop, I had to go with execution context, right? Because if you don't know about call stack, you won't be able to understand this. Clear? If you have doubt, go for recording. We have done it this thing after break, right? So half an hour after 9, you can watch the recording. Clear? Shall we move towards promises now? Promises की तरफ बढ़े हम, right? ठीक है. So again, guys, if you have doubts, please watch this thing again. Half an hour ka video hai. You can just go and watch it after 9. So now that you guys have seen some problems with asynchronous JavaScript ka code, right? What was that? First thing was we don't usually know how much time getting a data might take on different setups. Is this correct? Will we by sure shot know कि हर एक के PC में how much time it will take to load a data? Will we ever know that? Sure shot. Like let's say an organization is creating a website, so will they be able to know कि हर एक PC में what time do we need to send the data? No, right? So they'll be creating a universal code and it will take time on slower PCs, right? So that should not be the case. Now for fixing this, we have gone with set timeout, right? But let's say if you're running a function and this function takes 10 seconds, right? But delay हमने दिया है 5 milliseconds का, 5000 milliseconds का. So is this thing fine? No? Right? Because we know that finally it's again gonna take 15 seconds. And we are expecting just a delay of 5 seconds. Right? हमारा code जो है, it was just accepting a delay of 5 seconds. So we should not be going with this. We should be going with a parameter where we can get a definitive answer if a function is completed or not. If we are getting just these two statements, let's say कि if I'm running a piece of code and वहां से I'm getting a return statement which is says this function is completed or it's not completed. Will that be more easy to use rather than just guessing the estimate time? Right? Right? So this is work of promise. Right? तो promise क्या करता है? Promise क्या करता है? It doesn't specify an exact time, rather it specifies states, right? And promise may you have 3 states, right? A promise is either fulfilled, either it is rejected, or either it's in process, right? Jisko you can call it ongoing also, right? So if you guys have promised someone something, you either fulfill it, you either don't fulfill it, or it's in process of fulfilling. Yes? Yes. Set time would only work for milliseconds? Yeah. Right? Or of course, you can call it pending. Very good. Right? So this is how basically promises work. So हम क्या करते हैं? We just go and let's say we are gonna create a promise, right? So I'll name my promise. Right? So the syntax for creating promise is you'll write new and you'll write promise. Right? Now this thing again will take a callback function. Right? So I'll write a callback function and this callback function accepts 2 arguments, right? Or parameters, my bad. It's gonna accept resolve and it's gonna accept the reject. Right? So basically this is how you create a promise. Now, either you can resolve this promise or reject this promise. But let's do one thing. Let's for now console my promise. So what are we gonna get in console? Can anyone tell me? Are we gonna get a function? Console me, because we haven't written any logic, nothing at all. Right? Let's go and see. So if I go in here, I'm getting a promise thing which is an object, right? So basically, whenever you use new keyword and promise together, you get a object in return, right? So basically, we get a promise object in return, right? And this thing is gonna either have three states, right? It either has a pending state, it either has a fulfilled state, or it either has a rejected state. By default, the state is by default, if we are not giving it anything, yeah, state, it's pending, it's pending. Let's say if I resolve this, right? So now if I go in here and if I check the promise state, what is it? It's fulfilled. Let's say if I reject it, if I go again, it will say this thing is rejected. Right? So basically, again, we are not going for how is it used and all, just syntax पढ़ रहे हैं and what it returns. So basically, this is how you create a promise. It accepts two parameter, it accepts resolve and it accepts reject. By default, new promise returns fulfilled as the state of promise object by default, right? You can change the state based on what small method or callback function that you're calling. Right? We are calling these resolve and reject, right? So these are callback function. I hope that is clear, right? Resolve and reject. Clear? Now, how do we use it and all? I'll cover it, but is the syntax clear? Just the syntax part. Example, I'll give you guys. Syntax batao. Is it clear? Syntax. Syntax clear है ठीक तो now the example is nothing but basically it's there, promises are there to deal with asynchronous program, right? So let's create a small example jahan pe what we are gonna do is we are gonna get data from database, right? We're gonna read this data and we're gonna print this data. So first thing first, we are having a function which gets data from database. Another function is there which reads this data and another function is there which prints this data, right? You can take this thing as this thing, right? Download a zip file, read के जगह unzip the zip file and print की जगह open the file. Right? So basically, this is what we are trying to do with our application. Right? Abhi we won't be creating applications, we'll be just creating functions. Right? So let's create a function and I'm going to call it get data. Right? There's a function. Another function will be read data. Right? And then another function is there which is called print data. Right? So now first process was getting the data. Database se data get karna was the very first process. Right? So now if we get some data from database, will it take some time or will it come to us instantly? Let's assume that we are using database. Will it take some time or instantaneously we'll get that? It will take some time, right? So let's do one thing. How can we give that time? We can just write set timeout here, right? And in here, set timeout ke andar, I'm gonna write a small function. Right? This function is basically gonna get data. It's gonna create an array of object. It's gonna have name. And like, let's just give it some property. Check. So this is the data which we are getting from database and I'm gonna give it a delay of 4 seconds. Right? So by doing this, are we like somewhat showcase कर रहे कि हाँ database से हमें data मिल रहा है, taking some time, right? Again, for now we don't know how to get data from database, but delay add कर रहे हैं, right? What I'm gonna do is once this data is received, right? हम क्या करेंगे? We are gonna accept a callback here, which will read the data, right? So basically I'll get a callback read here, and in this I'll send my data, right? Abhi, if I call get data and if I pass read data in it, will I be passing this entire function in this? आराम से देखो और बताओ, yes or no? Will I be passing that entire function in? Right? Now in this function, we are passing data. So let's accept the data, right? Let's say कि we are accepting it in form of a variable which is called array, right? So array को accept करेंगे, and in here what we are gonna do is again we are gonna write a set timeout and function, and here we are just doing हाँ क्या करें यहाँ पे will call print data, and print data में will send array, right? Print data के अंदर we are sending array, right? So basically we're just showcasing कि हाँ we are extracting the files, we are reading the files. It's gonna take another 2 milliseconds, 2000 milliseconds, right? And finally I'm calling this print data वाला function, right? Can I run this function using a callback? Callback की तरह pass कर सकता हूँ, because going forward आगे चल के we're gonna keep everything dynamic, right? So rather than directly calling this function, I'm gonna call callback print, right? And this callback print is gonna accept this tick, and finally this thing is gonna accept a value. Let's do one thing. इसके अंदर एक काम करते हैं. Let array value equals to array 0 dot name, and if I pass array value in here, so if I do a console.log value, what am I gonna get? Final output. If I do console.log value there, यहाँ पे if I write console.log value, we're running array value. So this is gonna give me Virat, right? So I'm just gonna accept this value and I'm just gonna do a console.log of value, right? ठीक है. So now we have updated these functions a bit, right? Get data function is calling another function in it, which is called read data, right? To run this function, we are passing array value in it. Read data is accepting two values, array and callback print. दो values accept कर रहा है, right? तो we'll have to let the values know कि आपके अंदर दो values pass की जा रही है, right? So what we'll do is rather than doing this directly, हमें read data के अंदर दो values pass करनी है, 1 and 2, some values, right? So rather than calling it directly, we're gonna wrap it in an anonymous function, right? Again, I'll repeat it once again. Just follow me. In here, I will be accepting an array, and again, इसके अंदर I'll be calling read data, and in this, I'll be taking this array, and I'll pass it in here, right? And second, I'll be passing this callback function, right? So callback will be your print data, right? Right? Instead of array 0, array यहाँ पे accept किया, right? So whatever name that we are accepting it, we're gonna add it. Clear? So guys, is this piece of code gonna print anything or not? I know it's complex. I'll give you guys 2 minutes. थोड़ा आराम से समझो, right? थोड़ा easy example ले लेते. Trust me, these are very easy things that happen when you go for callback, right? ये जो create हो रहा है ना, it's a complex structure, right? Even following this is hard, right? I know it's hard because I'm teaching you guys. Hard के लिए ही बताना. This will be fixed using promises, very easy, right? So is it gonna print something? कुछ print होने वाला है या फिर नहीं? Let me read. No? Okay. Okay. So let's go in here. Are we printing Virat? Right? या फिर यहाँ पे हम add कर दे hello, right? And if I make it string, you'll see after some delay, no? after a delay of 4 seconds plus 2 seconds, we're going to get that value, Virat Hill, right? So let's walk through this code once again, right? These two functions are defined. We don't know what's there. We know that these are called in line number 185. So line number 185 mein, we're calling a function in which we are passing a callback function, right? So let's understand what happens in get data function. This get data function is accepting a callback function. It's doing a set timeout, and set timeout mein, it's creating a variable which is called data, which has an array, and it takes this callback function and it pass data in it, right? So basically callback में क्या pass किया हमने? Read data, right? And in this we are passing array. Now this thing was accepting two parameters, one array and one another function. So when we are calling this read data, na, we're passing array, which we have taken from here, and we'll pass another function which is print data. यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है? We're going for set timeout again, and we're taking the value. We're calling this print data function, and we're putting that array value. Finally, we're taking that value and we're printing it. Right? तो हमने क्या किया? We have used multiple function because they are dependent on each other. We have to create multiple callbacks. Yes. Yes. Guys, code का flow समझ आया? Right? Now you guys only tell me, what do you guys think? Is this easy? Is this easily understandable or is it hard? Let's say आपको समझ आ गया, but if you're trying to tell this to someone else, is it easily readable? Readable है क्या? It's not, right? So basically, we are using nested callbacks to create relation between different functions. Yes, yes, and this thing leads to something which is called callback hell. सुना है कभी callback hell? If not, this is going to be a technical term that you might hear in your interviews later. वो पूछेंगे, why do we need promises at all? You guys will say it helps us prevent something which is called callback hell. Clear? Clear? ठीक, तो अभी क्या होता है ना, when we deal with promise, हम क्या करते हैं? We deal it based on if they are resolved or rejected. Right? Callback hell means this complex structure which is created by putting एक function के अंदर another function and calling it another time. Right? So this complex system where we have created a function, we're calling another function in it, फिर उसके अंदर another function. So it's complex, right? That's why we call it callback hell. Clear? Like, are you guys getting it or not? Just the terms. ठीक, तो अभी क्या होता है? We can just use promises to fix this, right? क्या करेंगे? We'll go here and this entire thing, rather than just going for set timeout, will provide it a syntax of promise, right? हम क्या करेंगे? उसको promise का syntax दे देंगे. तो we will write return new promise, or rather I need to create a function. ठीक है, चलो, I'll just go with return new promise, and in here I'll write a function. Take, and this thing is gonna have two things, resolve and reject. Take, and then I'll create this. I'll take this entire piece of code and I'll paste it in here. Take, अभी क्या हुआ? Am I creating a promise? Right? Return में am I sending a promise? Like जैसे यहाँ पे हम promise बनाते थे with a variable. Right? So return statement is also like a variable. It can return a single value. Right? So I'm just trying to return a promise there. ठीक, वो सेंस बनाता है क्या प्रॉमिस रिटर्न कैसे हो रहा है? आई होप दैट मेक सेंस, मे बी राइट। अभी क्या करेंगे रादर देन जस्ट डायरेक्टली कॉलिंग अ कॉल बैक ना, हम क्या करेंगे, विल से कि दिस थिंग इज रिजॉल्व, एंड रिजॉल्व होने के बाद ना दिस थिंग इज पासिंग डेटा, राइट। वी आर नॉट यूजिंग एनी कॉल बैक और एनीथिंग, हम इसको रिजॉल्व कर रहे हैं एंड वी आर पासिंग अ डेटा। ठीक, सेम थिंग यहाँ पे भी करेंगे। वी आर गोना क्रिएट अ प्रॉमिस व्हिच रिटर्न न्यू promise. Again, this thing takes a further function. It takes two things: resolve and reject, right? And यहाँ पे I'm gonna take this entire thing and I'm gonna paste it in. Rather than directly going and doing this, हम क्या करेंगे? Will again resolve this, right? And resolve करने के बाद in here I'll pass array value. ठीक है, तो गाइस वो मैं रिटर्न स्टेटमेंट के क्या साथ क्या कर रहा हूँ, इज दैट क्लियर एवरीवन? आई होप दैट इज क्लियर बिकॉज दैट्स इंपॉर्टेंट, राइट। आई एम जस्ट क्रिएटिंग एवरीथिंग इन अ प्रॉमिस, कोड को प्रॉमिस में पुट कर रहा हूँ एंड आई एम रिजॉल्विंग इट फाइनली। ठीक, so all I'm doing is I'm wrapping it in a promise, and rather than going for a callback के अंदर passing another thing, I'm just writing resolve, and resolve के अंदर I'm passing, right? तो अभी क्या करेंगे, rather than going for this approach ना, will go with directly calling this promise, right? तो हम directly जाके उस promise को call करें। So it starts from very first this function, get data function, right? अभी क्या होगा, this get data function is gonna return you what? It's gonna return you what? It's gonna return you a promise object. Promise return करेगा, right? Will that promise be fulfilled because we have resolved it, right? So if I go and do a console.log of this get data, no, console.log of this get data, I'm getting promise which उसका state है pending for now, right? अभी क्या करेंगे, to deal with this pending status, we'll go for this get data and we'll write dot then, right? तो basically हम क्या करेंगे, we say कि I'm gonna call this function, and then once this function is done completing ना, I'm gonna go for another thing, right? Now why would I need this dot then? पहले तो ये देख, again I'm calling this get data and let's go for a console, right? So console.log get data. अभी promise is pending, but I hope you guys understand कि for now अभी के लिए तो promise is pending, right? But after 4 seconds this thing will be fulfilled, right? Why will it fulfill? Because there is a set timeout of 4 seconds, right? तो fulfill होने के बाद ना we deal with it by using dot then, right? So again get data, we'll call it and we'll write dot then. So basically we're saying once this function is done running na, after then I want to run something else, right? So again here I'll write a function and this function will accept whatever resolve वाला value आपने pass किया है. So in resolve we are getting data. अब क्या करेंगे, we are getting this data and we're going to use this data, right? तो इसके अंदर we'll call this function read data function. So I'll call read data and I'll call it. ठीक, but read data has to be called with data. ठीक, now once this read data return हो जाता है, it returns this resolve value, I'm just gonna write again a dot then, and फिर I'll write a function, and now this thing is gonna return you this array value, right? So I'm just gonna accept that value, and finally I'll call this print data function. So print data with the value, right? If I go and check my output after a certain time, it's printing hello. We have might be missing some chain. इसके अंदर we are passing the data, and in read data we're passing our another data. Then we are going for a dot then, and we're getting a value, resolve value. Wait a second, let me just print this value and let me see what we are getting. Right? So एक second देना, console.log this data. Right? So after 4 seconds, I should be getting this data. I'm getting the data, which is this name Virat. Right? So after 4 seconds, now once this function is done running, हमने क्या किया? Once it is resolved, right? जब वो resolve हो रहा है, we are going for dot there. And in this, we are printing that data. Once this is done, I'll write one more dot then, and I'll write another function जिसमें हमें वो data pass करना. So I'll accept the value and print data is the function in which I'm gonna pass the value, right? But let's do one thing. Before passing it now, we just do console.log value. Let's see what happens. So we're getting undefined here for some reason. Okay, we don't need this. And array value has array 0 dot name. It's an array, yeah. So we're going with array dot name, no? So resolve me, it should give me that. Let's say if I do data dot value, then we're getting undefined in that case. Okay, okay. Okay, let's see what's the issue. हम भेज रहे array, data array here. So read data में we should be sending the array. We are sending the array and this is happening with array. Array का 0th element is being attached. We are array value send कर रहे हैं. No. Print data. Okay, okay. Finally, let's do one thing. The print data should return something. Well, let me return this console.log. Right, let me return value plus hello and then I'll print it, right? So dot then function value or arrays, and if I do a console.log of arrays, let's see what happens. So yeah, we're still getting undefined. So let's do one thing rather than doing this now. Let's just pass the array as it is, and uski value we can print it later. Right? So यहाँ पे will print the value as it is. So console.log the value. Right? We'll just print the array. That's all for. Right. So basically, the point was that rather than using callback and passing callback functions in each and everything, what we do is we create a function and we either resolve it or reject it based on we're getting the data or not. Right? ये चीज कल और sense बनाएगी when we are learning about fetch. Right? For now, let's assume कि fetch is completed and resolve is running. Right? या तो resolve run होगा या reject run. So we're running resolve with this data. So if I take this function, if it's getting resolved, I can use dot then and I can print the value of resolve. Right? If it's getting rejected, right? अगर एक promise reject हो जाता है due to some error, right? Due to some error, what we'll do is we'll write dot catch, right? And in here, I'll accept that error and I'll print console.log that. Take, so if I go here now, after a few seconds, it's just gonna print that error. Kyunki, given that it is getting rejected, rather than going in your dot then wala code block, it's gonna enter dot catch. Right? So basically, rather than callback में क्या होता है? Callback में again, let me just explain you with diagram. More explain, more clear curly होगा. So basically, callback में क्या होता है? Let's say you have one function, you have second function, and you have third function. Now, first function is dependent on second, and second function is dependent on first. right? So finally one function is there, उसके अंदर second की dependency होगी and उसके अंदर third की dependency होगी, something like this will happen. So what I'll do is function 1 में I'll pass function 2 and then in function 2 I'll pass function 3, right? So this is the way how callback works, right? But this gets complex, right? Callback के अंदर callback, when we go for it, it gets complex. Rather than doing that, now what we do is we create individual functions and we return promises from it. राइट हर एक फंक्शन इंडिविजुअली क्रिएट होता है विदाउट एनी रिलेशन एंड वी क्रिएट प्रोमिसेस ऑन देम. अब क्या करते हैं, बेस्ड ऑन दिस प्रॉमिस ना, लेट्स से इफ दिस प्रॉमिस इज गेटिंग रिजॉल्व्ड, हम क्या करेंगे, विल अप्लाई डॉट देन इन इट, राइट? वंस इट्स रिजॉल्व्ड विल क्रिएट रिलेशन, सो विल टेक दिस सेकंड फंक्शन एंड विल कॉल इट. एक बार वो रिजॉल्व हो, right? Once the second function is resolved, we'll go with dot then, and then finally we'll create a relation with third, right? Rather than going for callback, we're just going for multiple dot thens. Is it more readable? Is it more readable? कहाँ use होता है? Fetch में use होगा. कल I'll show you. Right? Today we're just learning syntax. Tomorrow we'll be using the application. ठीक है, तो आज के लिए just theory part was there. Tomorrow we'll be actually using. ठीक, but let's say कि this thing is rejected, तो in this case ना dot then के साथ will also write a dot catch, right? तो it works as a if else block only. अगर वो resolve हो रहा है, if it's true, then it's gonna enter if it's getting rejected, it's gonna enter else or catch वाला. Clear? Evaluation में MDN का यूज कर सकते हैं. What I remember, yes, you can use MDN, only the official documentation rather than any other thing like W3 schools or anything. MDN use कर रहे हो, it should be fine. ठीक है, तो just the syntax of how you can create promises, why do you need promises to prevent callback hell, is that clear? Everyone? Right? I know today wala session it was a bit more on theory side, so it might take one more repetition to understand how all is there. So you guys will go for it. That's not an issue. I'm pretty sure at least initial 1 hour was fine. Right? How set timeout and set interval and all works. Right? So last wala 1 hour hai, go watch once again recording and you will get it. Right? It's just theory and syntax, nothing else. Application will learn it tomorrow, and trust me, इतना बड़ा जो promise लिखा है ना, you won't ever be using it like this. You'll just go with what I'll teach you tomorrow. Right? तो आज की चीजें, if this will be useful in your interviews, कल की चीजें will be useful when creating your projects. ठीक है, तो yeah, I'll cover it once again. Clear? Guys, ठीक है, हो जाएगा, राइट? तो आज नहीं समझ आया कोई नहीं, चिल करो, इट्स नॉट एन इश्यू. एक बार लास्ट का 1 hour, इफ यू गेट टाइम, डू गो थ्रू इट. इफ नॉट, आई मेक इट मच मोर सिंपलर इन टुमारो सेशन, राइट? तो टुमारो विल लर्न अबाउट फेच, एंड फेच इज इनहेरेंटली अ प्रॉमिस, राइट? तो फेच इस तरीके से एक प्रॉमिस ही हो. क्लियर? तो इन टुमारो सेशन इट विल बी मच क्लियर, ठीक, एंड इजी.